What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. If you did not know, Riot is going to be starting doing Timewinder gauntlets. What does that mean? That means that the gauntlets, the next few gauntlets are going to be themed and very limited in the card pools you can actually play. The next gauntlet, starting this Thursday, November the 24th, is actually only going to be with Foundations cards, which should be pretty exciting. We've been spending some time building some decks for this, and I have a list of about 9 decks here that I think will probably be the best ones that you should be playing in this gauntlet. The gauntlet is going to run for it's going to run the full week, not just over the weekend, which is like the normal gauntlet thing, as well as is going to run until December the 21st. After that, they're going to have the Rising Tides, Call the Mountain. They're going to keep going. So yeah, it should be a lot of fun, and let's check out some decks. So first up, my initial thought as soon as I saw this was that the best cards in the game in Foundations are going to be 6-Mana Vengeance, Val Feast, and Glimpse Beyond. I think these are just hands down going to be the best cards. So as you're going to see, quite a few of these decks are taking advantage of those as being the best cards. The first one up I actually have is Iceborn Legacy. So Iceborn Legacy got buffed compared to what it was way back when. And this is very, very similar to the Iceborn Legacy list that you could run today, right now, in the game on ladder. There's only a few card changes. We do have like an Endure in here as a little bit of top end, but otherwise you're just going to be playing Iceborn Legacy on your Spiderlings and just absolutely smorking your opponent down. Atrocity is really good as just a way to get a little bit of that last bit of damage. Otherwise, you just grab every single Spiderling card in here. And yeah, I think that this should be a really strong option. I think there's a couple different failure to SI decks, and I think that this is going to be one of the better ones. The next deck we have up is actually going to be Heimerdinger SI. Again, coming back to SI being just sort of the best region. We have our 6-Mana Vengeance, and we're running a lot of different these 6-Mana spells. We're running like Brood Awakening, which normally doesn't look that great, but it's really good against Demacia because you get to chump down forever. The rallies, rallies really expensive. They're going to have trouble finding that last bit of damage. Plus, with Heimerdinger, of course, it's creating that elusive turret. Now, we don't have Hextech Handler, which is the thing that busts up all your turrets, and we don't have the 1-drop that gets to share keywords, but I still think that the value alone is probably going to be incredibly valuable in this, and you could probably just outgrind a lot of people. As far as our units, we are running the discard package as well as Barkeep. So my understanding of it is that I don't think that card generation is limited to just Foundations, which means I'm running Barkeep because Barkeep can hit real cards in the game, power corrupt cards. And I think that the first time that you mini-morph somebody in the gauntlet, you make them cry, I think that would be great. You're running a lot of discards, so you can discard these. If you don't want to run this Barkeep, if you want really the true Foundations experience, you can just run the Chump Wump instead, the 4-drop. 4-mana 4/4 generates some Mushroom Clouds, because Mushroom Clouds are good with Heimerdinger as well as discardable. Otherwise, we are just going to be cycling through cards. There's a whole lot of draw, a whole lot of card generation. I think it's just going to be the value deck. Next up, we have Zed Elusives, which apparently had taken over the game for quite a while. If you guys didn't know, I didn't play the game until Aphelios came out. So a lot of this is very new to me, but apparently this deck was very good at the time. We slapped in a lot of Elusives here, a little bit of hand buffing with Greenglade Elder, Inspiring Mentor, as well as Jeweled Protector. So we're basically just stacking up some really big Elusives, dropping them down, and, with a lack of removal in the game, outside of like 6-Mana Vengeance, there isn't a whole lot to deal with these cards, especially since we're on like Elixir of Iron, even like a 1-of Battle Fury, some Denies, some Twin Disciplines. It's going to be very difficult to actually kill any of the elusives. So you just jam your elusives and you just go to town and absolutely destroy your opponent. Will is in here just because 4-mana Will is a very good tempo positive play. And Omen Hawk is just for hand buffs as well. Otherwise, it's just a lot of elusives. You've seen elusives before. It's elusive aggro. Next up, we have Spooky Karma. Now, I tried not to build a Karma deck. I tried so hard to not build a Karma deck, but I know you guys like Karma decks. The issue with Karma is that Palm didn't exist back then, and Deep Med did not exist. So in Foundations, in the original set, those cards do not exist. So it's a lot harder to survive. That said, I do think that we have quite a bit here. We're still running Vengeance. We're still running Ruination. We're running really good cards still, right? Vile, Glimpse. But a little bit of this is going to look a little funny, right? We're running Emerald Awakener in here just as a late game option. Supposedly these games should go later, right? So like, having like this very large lifesteal unit should be good late game. Soul Gorger as well is a little bit harder to deal with, especially for a lot of Demacia decks. Consurge Strike doesn't exist. And like if they Vengeance your Soul Gorger instead of like a Karma, that sounds stellar. These are just tools to survive till late game, and then eventually Karma is just going to get you there, right? With our card generation, eventually you'll find a way to win the game, but you're Karma gamers. You already know that we are slapping actual win cons into our decks. And of course, Thresh is pulling out Karma. Next up, we have Fiora Lux. So Lux is a card that has been buffed multiple times. She used to be 6 mana, she's now 5 mana. Play cast changes have affected her, so you're always getting lasers more consistently. And I think she's going to be a lot stronger. I decided to pair her with new Fiora. Fiora just being a 4/4 challenger is a very big body, and hopefully will be able to hold down the board for you. And we actually have quite a few really big bodies in this deck. Mageseeker Persuader gets very big, has challenger. Even Mageseeker Insider gets really large, and I think that stats might be the name of the game. Again, we're running Vengeance. We've seen a lot of Vengeance. We're going to keep seeing Vengeance. Vengeance, Remembrance, back-to-back even, Brood Awakening. And again, we're running Brood Awakening just because it's a very good value engine for our massive 5 spell unit. Otherwise, one of Vengeance, one of Harrowing, just a little bit of top end, a little bit to just get you there at the end. Otherwise, it's going to look pretty similar. One Radiant Guardian just to help out against aggro, but I think that this deck could be really solid. You're running a lot of, really strong units. Even Mageseeker Conservator generating you spells, any sort of card generation, I think is going to be really strong. So yeah, I have faith in this deck. Next up, Ashe Katarina. So this is going to be Ashe Noxus. As you've seen Ashe Noxus a million times before, there isn't a whole lot that's missing here. We're missing Whispered Words and LeBlanc and like the 8-mana rally guy. But otherwise, this is pretty similar to what you could play right now. And Katarina is a very strong champion. In the recent Worlds qualifier, she was the most played champion. So finding a Katarina deck seemed like the way to go because she's much stronger than she was at this point in time, right? Generating those daggers is really strong. What we're looking at here is just the normal Ashe Noxus, a lot of freezes, a lot of protection, some removal with Culling Strike, Reckoning, 5-mana Harsh Winds could be really good. Otherwise, we have buffed up Hearthguard, we're running Trifarian Assessor, we're running Omen Hawk, we're going to be drawing a lot more cards than a lot of other people, and I think that's going to be one of the strong suits here. Farron is the top end. If games are going later, then the Decimates will still be pretty good, even if they are a little bit nerfed. Otherwise, I think this deck could just end up being pretty solid. It might have a little bit of trouble into aggro, which is why we have like some house spiders in here. If you're not worried about aggro, you can maybe throw in, a couple more Rhymefang Wolves, maybe Avarice and Sentry, a couple more copies. Otherwise, should be a really solid deck. Next up, we have Discard Aggro. For all you aggro enjoyers, this is incredibly similar, again, to the deck that you can play on ladder right now. The only card that we're missing, basically, is Poro Cannon. No Poro Cannon makes this deck a little bit weaker because you can't push as much damage through elusives combined with like Battlecaster and Vision, but otherwise should still be very good, especially with the Jinx buff. Running some Draven's Biggest Fan, otherwise it's your normal aggro package. Arena Battlecaster is the most important card, of course. You go wide, he gives you massive buffs. That combined with Vision can just be absolutely disgusting. Otherwise, crowd favorite and then Augment Experimenter as your top end. Deck should just be really solid. My worry with this deck is if I'm correct and there's going to be a lot of Shadow Isles, then you might have trouble getting past all the healing. Otherwise, this should be a very strong archetype. Next up, we have Anivia. I didn't want to build this deck. I didn't want to include this deck. This deck might just be the best deck in Foundations. It might just be because you get to run Anivia, you get to run Rekindler, you get to run Harrowing. Like, this is just the deck. This is just the deck that's, like, in the game right now. There's a few differences, maybe, like, no Gluttony, no Ravine. You're missing a couple of tools that you would otherwise run, right? Instead of running, like, some Grasps. Otherwise, I don't know, man. This is the deck. This just like is basically like a low tier 2 deck right now on, in the game right now that you could just play and beat up on everybody who's playing, more fun decks. So if you want that option, I think this is very good. I don't know if it's necessarily better than the Iceborn Spiders list, and they do share the same region colors, but otherwise it should be a very strong deck. And then last up, we did end up making an Elites deck. So with Garen, of course, the Garen buff, putting stats on board should be very strong. You also, Vanguard Squire is very good at cheating out units early. You get to play Bannerman. You've seen this deck before, right? Like, you're just Control F elites, you're throwing in a lot of elites. Vanguard First Blade is buffed from the last time that you have seen him. He is a 3/3 now. He gets very big. Cytherea to end games, Tiana to end games, some rallies. Our splash here is Deny, just to beat, the Vengeance decks, the Ruination decks. Seems like a pretty good way to go. We do have a back-to-back in here. If you want, you can maybe fit in like a Riposte or two. Otherwise, I think that this is probably going to be the way to go. And of course, Battlesmith to buff up all of your elites. Either way, I think that these are a pretty wide variety of decks that you can play. Some mid-range, some aggro, some control. I think that it probably will be dominated by vengeance types decks. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys enjoy. Yeah, good luck in Gauntlet.